Good afternoon. We will start in a couple of minutes. We'll just wait for some people to log in. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We are here to have our second to last presentation for this speaker series. I want to start by, again, thanking the United States Department of State through its U.S. Embassy in Mexico and the Study Abroad program. Together with Comexus, we have organized this speaker series in order to provide U.S. undergraduate students with a deeper knowledge and understanding of the U.S.-Mexico bilateral relationship, and of course, hopefully entice everyone to choose Mexico as a study abroad destination. This afternoon, I am very happy and very honored to introduce to you Gerardo Rodriguez, who will be presenting today on security. Gerardo is the director of the Department of International Relations and Political Science, the academic coordinator of the Center for Impunity and Justice Studies, and associate professor at the International Department at Universidad de las Américas Puebla, UTLAP. He coordinated the Masters in Global Governance at UTLAP, Jenkins Graduate School in Mexico City. Since 2018, he has been professor at the National Defense College of Mexico, and he is vice president of the Mexican Association of International Studies, AMEI. Sorry. In 2005, he was selected by the U.S. Department of State to be part of the postgraduate program of the U.S. Institute on National Security Fulbright-García Special Program. So he is an alum of the Fulbright-García Robles program, and we are very happy about that. Professor Rodriguez has been invited also to these following visiting programs. First session on Latin American Defense Studies in 2007 by the Institut de Hautes Études de Défense Nationale de France in Paris, and also the Future Leaders Program, study of the French National Security Ministry and intelligence agencies in 2007, and the European Policies and Best Practices Against Corruption and Impunity, supported by the Frederick Ebert Stiftung in Brussels in 2016. Since 2005, he has been professor of the Mexican Military and National Security Academies on Terrorism, Organized Crime, National Security, and Foreign Policy. He has offered public and private conferences for the National Defense University of Austria, the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington, D.C., France Joint Service Defense College, Military University of Nueva Granada in Colombia, University of Chile, the U.S. Embassy Office of the Defense Attaché in Mexico, the William J. Perry Center for Hemispheric Studies of the National Defense University, the U.S. Office of National Drug Control Policy at the National Security Council in the White House in Washington, D.C., and the Center for Strategic Studies of the Army of Peru. Professor Rodriguez was General Coordinator at the Mexican Consumer Protection Agency, Profeco, and has been high-level officer at the Presidency of Mexico, the Ministry of Foreign Relations, and the Foreign Relations Committee at the Mexican Congress. He also collaborates recently as national security and terrorism analyst for CNN, El Financiero, Bloomberg TV, The Huffington Post, Univision, Telemundo, CCTV America, Radio France International, and El País in Spain. His weekly column, Cuarto de Guerra, War Room, is published every Thursday in the national newspaper El Heraldo de México. He has a master's in public policy by the Facultad Latinoamericana de Ciencias Sociales, Flaxo, an undergraduate degree in international relations and national security diploma by the Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo de México, ITAM, and PhD studies in international relations at Universidad Nacional de La Plata in Argentina. His last book is Mexico's National Security and its Structural Problems, published by Fulbright-García in 2017, and he's also a co-author of the Global Impunity Index. Gerardo, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon and for giving us a presentation on topics of security in the bilateral relation. Thank you, Gerardo.
Thank you, Hazel. I'm also really grateful. I want to thank also the U.S. Embassy at Mexico City, at Comexus, to the Fulbright program. When I was 25 years old, I received my grant from the Fulbright program to make a U.S. study in Delaware University, the University of President Biden. So it is my great pleasure to be with you to talk about the U.S.-Mexico national security problems and agenda. And also, I'll be glad to hear from you your questions after and between my presentation. Please be free to make comments in the chat room. I'll try to be multifunctional, like my wife. So I'm going to present some PowerPoints. As Hazel presented me, I'm the director of the International Relations and Political Science Department at the University of Las Americas, Puebla. The UTLAP is the American University in Mexico. We were founded in 1940 by the U.S. citizens that lived here in Mexico City and wanted to have a college degree with the recognition, with certification of the U.S. public education institutions. So right now we have this connection with the U.S. Embassy, and for sure with Comexus and the Fulbright programs. Well, the first thing I want to say is, let me see, I think that we have like 25 participants in this conversation, in this webinar. I want to say to you that Mexico is by far the most important partner for the US in the next decades in this century. Here is the PwC PricewaterhouseCoopers index on the projections for economic power for the world for the 2050. And you can see that the projections of one of the 5 most important international consultants company is that Mexico is going to be the 7th economy by the year 2050. So if you want to be, if you want to study in Mexico, you are not making a wrong decision, because Unfortunately, the US is projected to be the second superpower, economic superpower by the 2050, with India, Indonesia, Brazil, Japan, and Mexico. See, please, where is Canada in this list? Canada is going to be the 17th most important power. Some years ago, Canada was member of the G7, G10, but Mexico is going to be in the most important list for the decisions in the economic scenario. The projections for the population in Mexico is that we are also growing, and this is the demographic power of Mexico that the US and Canada also wants to be in the future economic development of the region. As I imagine that many of the members of this seminar have told you, since 1994, since NAFTA, Mexico and the US have made a strategic economic alliance. Although we have a lot of problems between our two countries, we are allies. And the Mexican government and the Mexicans, we know the importance of our strategic relations. Let me tell you which is the national security agenda of Mexico. The national security risks and menaces to our security. This is the Mexican point of view. The first one is organized crime, for sure. The second one is illicit traffic of arms. The 70% of these arms comes from the US, for sure. And I'm not Dumbledore to say to you that for sure, corruption and impunity are top 3 problems in Mexico. Illicit immigration flows. Illicit immigration flows. For Mexico, the immigrants are not, and I have to be extraordinarily emphatic in these terms, the immigrants are not a threat to Mexico. It is the network of organized crime from Central America that brings these illegal immigrants to Mexico, that they don't want to be here in Mexico. They want to go to the US and Canada. The pandemic, for sure, this is one of the most important threats to international security in the last years. Insurgencies. For sure, Mexico has some historical insurgencies, small ones. Don't think that if you come to Mexico, you're going to see a guerrilla movement like the Zapatistas movement in 1994. Natural disasters and climate change. Mexico is a oceanic country. We have two, like the US, we have 2 oceans, the Pacific and the Atlantic, and we are right now receiving the most important effects of the climate change. If Mexico don't make, as with the US, China, and the rest of the world, we don't make the extraordinary steps against climate change, Mexican territory will be under sea at the end of this century. Finally, international terrorism. For example, international terrorism, right now, I think that is the second most important threat to the US national security after the expansion of Russia in Europe and Ukraine. Well, for Mexico, it's not an issue, because in Mexico, we don't have terrorist groups, and but we kept this threat in our national security agenda because of you, because of the United States. nationals and the United Nations, the United States government, because for you is a top 3 international threat. So about organized crime, Mexico, in terms of narcotics, is a 3-problem country. We produce for sure heroin and marijuana and cocaine in less terms. By far, we are a country that many Central Americans and Mexicans and Colombian organized crime organizations use the Mexican territory airspace to bring this drug to Mexico and pass to the US. The fentanyl problem is a binational problem for sure. China, India, and also Germany are top producers of illegal fentanyl. And this illegal fentanyl comes here to Mexico by the Pacific coast aduanas, ports. We receive here in Mexico and they pass through the US. Important is that also the fentanyl is arriving to the US from the San Diego port, and other Pacific ports. The fourth menace in terms of organized crime to Mexico, and also is related with the US, all these threats to the national security of Mexico are related with the US market, because the US citizens are the consumers of all these illicit markets, illicit products, illicit services. The illicit traffic of persons. We receive by far, sorry. They're calling me from CNN. Sorry. I'm going to close my app. Sorry. The next thing, as I was telling, illicit traffic of persons, immigrants, refugees, and persons that want to be in a very position in terms of economic terms. And dual products, the ADMs, that maybe you maybe know that there's some illicit products that can be produced as massive destruction arms, or armas de destrucción masiva in español. So, and some new crimes in the agenda of organized crime are cybercriminality, illegal traffic of wild products, and mining and forest products. The second and most important threat to the Mexican national security is the illicit arms trafficking. As I told you, between the 70 and the 80% of the arms that are in Mexico, and that the Mexican Army and the Mexican National Security Police comes from the US. 30% comes from Central America and the rest of the world. Unfortunately, 42% of the criminals that make some time of illicit activity have an arm in Mexico, a weapon in Mexico. So this is one of the most important priority to the Mexican government. As you may know, the Mexican government have demanded a legal statement in the Michigan State Court against the arms factories that have their legal constitution in Michigan. So the Mexican government is using some of the US legal weapons against these industries, these companies. In this term, we have to recognize that there is some kind of coalition between the government of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and President Biden against these companies. These companies, as you for sure know, that they have political, economic agreements, sponsorship to the Republican Party. So in these terms, you have to know that the Mexican government told the US Embassy, the US government in Washington, that we were going to make this legal appointment against this US arms industry. So this is an extraordinary effort for the legal advisors, the advocates inside the Mexican government. You have to know also Mexico have US attorneys that are supporting these private attorneys that are supporting these demands against these industries. It is important also to say that these legal actions, they are not against the US government. They're against these companies. Also, a critical point is what Mexico has to do to stop this arms trafficking from the US. The Mexican government, the President López Obrador, decided to have this executive order to the Mexican Army and the Mexican Navy to control all the ports in Mexico. So, because for sure we know that there's a lot of corruption in the Mexican ports, in the US Mexican ports. So we hope, and I have heard directly from the US Embassy, public servants, diplomats, that the coordination, talks, communications between the US and Mexican governments are really improving in this, what it is called the Entendimiento Bicentenario, the bicentennial dialogue, because we are celebrating the 200 relations between our countries. The next threat to national security in Mexico, and it is recognized by our government, is corruption and impunity. Unfortunately, the money laundering of organized crime is one of the most important problems for Mexico. This government, although it is, and I think that it is because it is a leftist government, it put a lot of pressure and a lot of importance to the money laundering problem. We have SAR of money laundering, a chief of anti-money laundering, Santiago Nieto, in the first 3 years of the government of President López Obrador, that make it visible that this is one of the most important problems. And if we resolve or we reduce money laundering in Mexico, we can make a lot of efforts to reduce corruption, impunity, organized crime. Because if you have saw the extraordinary movies of The Godfather, the mafias, the cartels, the organized crime, they want to move their money to the legal system. And also there's corruption, there's impunity in other international cases like Odebrecht, for example. I have to say that it was a great mistake of the Mexican government to let it pass the Odebrecht problems, the Odebrecht crisis. And why? Because unfortunately, the former president Peña Nieto and his team was involved in this case of bribery. Illicit flows of immigrants. The Biden presidency is really stressed because of this problem. And the Mexican government knows that, because the Republicans are using this problem in electoral terms. The Mexican government, is not in favor of Democrats or Republicans, and I want to make this connection, because many U.S. citizens may think that Mexico is more close to the immigration policies of Democrats. And by far we are. But the latest most important structural reform in terms of immigration was with Ronald Reagan. There was a republic. For sure that some of the executive orders of President Obama were really good for Mexican immigrants, not to make extraordinary detentions of immigrants. But all the Democrats and Republican presidents have the pressure of their public opinion to improve the law enforcement against illegal immigration. So the Mexican government knows this. The next point is the crisis in Central America. The Central American illegal flows of immigrants are right now the biggest in terms in numbers than Mexicans illegal immigrants. And all these Central American immigrants goes from the Mexican territory. In terms of national security, there are a lot of problems. The first one is the US-Mexican relation. Washington makes a lot of pressure to the Mexican government to stop this illegal immigration from the Central American countries. So this is a problem that makes a pollution to all the bilateral relations. You have to remember that President Trump made a statement, a really bad statement to Mexico, and a clear, real menace that if we don't cooperate detaining, stopping Central American immigration, Trump was going to cancel NAFTA. And this was a national security for Mexico. The 80% of our commerce, our trade, is with the US. So this is what in international security theories is economic security, economic and financial security. And the Mexican government really takes step in this issue. And we sent 6,000 National Guard elements to the southern border. This is by far a small number of national police we sent that President Trump said in their statements. But 6,000 policemen, national guards to the southern border of Mexico is a great number of persons that can make other things like helping national security state institutions. So this is a real complex problem to the US-Mexico relations. Also, this government with our OFAC, the Office for Foreign Actives, like that is in the Department of Justice in Washington, OFAC, and our Financial Intelligence Unit detected many money laundering of these organizations that they say that they are Christian, Catholic organizations that promote, that defend the human rights of these people from Central America. Well, they receive a lot of money from these immigrants. So many NGOs are related with the organized crime of these illegal flows of persons from Central America and from Mexico also. Also, you have to know that there are other nationalities that are coming from Mexico, other persons from other regions like Africa that are trying to go to the US asking for refugee status. And for example, right now, Mexico has a little crisis. It is a little crisis of citizens from Ukraine that are trying to go to the US that in the last weeks came from this country. Pandemics, for sure, I'm not going to stop in this threat. For sure, Mexico keeps this threat in the national security agenda. There are small guerrilla insurgent movements in Mexico, but for the Mexican government is a threat. It's not the most important. I'm going to make some conclusions. Hazel, natural disasters and climate change. Unfortunately, for the Mexican president, it is not a great threat, but for the Mexican national security institutions, it is a threat because every year we have natural disasters. International terrorism is not a really threat, but because our compromises with the US, the UN, with France, with Great Britain, we maintain the international terrorism in our national security agenda. But this is the last and the most important point I want to tell you. Unfortunately, there are some threats that by this government, they think that there are threats coming from the US. And I don't like this point of view. But structural problems of the relations with the US are considered national security threats to Mexico. So the agenda, and if you like to come to Mexico to study there is a lot of future, because we are strategic partners, we are trade partners. The future of our international relations, the future of our national security is deeply closed. The US national security passed from Mexico, and the national security of Mexico passed from the US. Thank you, Hazel. I'll be glad to have some comments from your students. I hope to be students here in Mexico. Thanks.
Thank you, Gerardo. We have some questions in the chat, and I will read them out to you if you don't mind. So the first question is from Marin and McDavid, and she's asking, how much fentanyl is arriving in Mexico and the US Pacific ports from China versus India or Germany, and why in particular is this illegal production in Germany so little known?
Ordinary question. Germany was the first country to make illegal production of fentanyl because of the First World War. The fentanyl is a drug that it is supervised by international agencies and national agencies. Medicine doctors, many of them, you already know this. It is a legal drug, but controlled. The fentanyl, China is a super economic power on the pharmacy and drugs industry, legal industries. But as you know, there are a lot of companies in China that in illegal hours, they produce illicit products. And that is why China and India are the two most important superpowers in terms of the production of fentanyl. And because of Mexico, we have the second partner, the second trade partner of Mexico is China. So there's a lot of corruption, or there was, I hope, before the Mexican Army and the Mexican Navy take control of the seaports and the earth ports. We have reduced the illicit trafficking of fentanyl from China and from India. But recently, I talked with some US and Mexican officials of national security, and they tell me that the illicit trafficking from fentanyl from Germany continues. So we don't have to stop the observancy, the intelligence from these illegal activities from Germany. You know? But don't think that Germany is like Afghanistan or Mexico in terms of illicit traffic of fentanyl.
Thank you. So Julio Quiñones has a question, and he is asking, what laws has Mexico implemented in the last 10 years to facilitate asset forfeiture in organized crime matters?
Let me read the question. What laws has Mexico implemented in the last 10 years to facilitate asset forfeiture in organized crime matters? Okay, yes, thank you for the question, Julio. Mexico has passed federal laws to, I think that the correct word in English is forfeiture. Yes, when private persons and private companies are used to money laundering. So if the Mexican authorities detect that a person or a company were used and they didn't make what you know the due diligence, no. If the Mexican companies have a legal responsibility to make the due diligence to detect who is the person that you're receiving money to give a service of or selling a product, like cars, department, houses, etc. So this national law has, I think that it has at least 10 years. The first one was during the presidency of President Calderon. And there are also local laws in these terms. For the first for teacher law was in Mexico City. And then came the national law in these terms. Unfortunately, it is really difficult to for private persons. For example, I live in Condesa in Mexico City. I have a department here. My neighbors 5 years ago were from Colombia, and I love Colombians. I have really good friends at the Colombian Army, National Security, and friends from Colombia. But unfortunately, my neighbors from Colombia, they were drug traffickers. And I make a really tough statement in a meeting of neighbors of our building. And I told that the propietario, Jesús, ayúdame tantito, of this department.
The owner?
The owner of the apartment maybe can lose their department if the Mexican authorities make a legal statement against, because they discovered that there was drug trafficking department here at the Condesa is like the village at New York. No? So it is like a artist department, artist county. So yes, but they're not that tough like in Colombia, Julio.
Okay. Now, Seth, no, there's an anonymous attendee that is asking, do you think that reducing money laundering problem will help in reducing violence related to organized crime, or will it worsen it?
Absolutely. Money laundering, anti-money laundering programs, policies, actions, I think is the most important thing that Mexico has to do, the Mexican government. I don't know how to say it in English. Es el eslabón perdido, the lost chain, like
lost link.
It is the lost link. It has been the lost link in Mexican policies against organized crime. Why? Because if you have a really powerful agency against money laundering, you can use it also against political corruption. And this is my personal hypothesis of investigation, that last governments, they didn't use it effectively. And also this government used the money laundering policies against their political adversaries. No? So in these terms, we need the efforts of the US to push the Mexican government in these efforts, in these policies. Sorry, Jesús. It was not stated in my bio, but I was also advisor to the national, the Mexican director of anti-money laundering, Santiago Nieto, for 4 years. So I know this policy is very good.
Thank you, Gerardo. Now, Seth Higginbottom is saying, Maestro Gerardo Rodri, thank you for the very informative webinar and for explaining Mexico's national security issues so clearly. I learned a lot and enjoyed the presentation, and I have one question. How much do political ideologies play a role in Mexico's bilateral relation with other nations?
How much do political ideologies play a role in Mexico's bilateral relations with other nations? China and Russia? For sure, yes. Yes and no. Ideologies are ideologies, but interests are interests. And the Mexican governments, the Mexican institutions, we really know that our interests are with the US, but our heart, our sentiments are with other countries. Mexico has trade relations with China, but they're not political ones. Although Mexico was President Echeverría in the 1970s was like a secret negotiator with the Chinese government and the Nixon's government with Henry Kissinger to the renewal of the relations of the US-Chinese relations. So Mexico wants to be a regional power, a middle-term power. So Mexico wants to, not only the leftist ideologies, it is a strategic issue for Mexico to make a diversification, improve the relations with other countries, because we know that this asymmetrical structural relation with the US is not really good in political terms and economic terms. But the neighborhood of North America makes Mexico to be, in strategic terms, an ally from the US. Russia and China are more interested in Mexico than Mexico is interested in China and Russia. So, for example, Mexico, the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Relations went to the international market to buy vaccines, and Russia sent us some millions of Russian vaccines, the Sputnik. It was a great effort, and it was something that the Mexican needs, because the international, the European and US market of vaccines were restricted, were focused on the US and European market in the first months of the international vaccination. And also Mexico went to the international market, to China, to buy Chinese vaccines. It is a problem, for example, for the Mexican professors. Most of them were vaccinated with the Chinese vaccines. So Mexico and the US knows that Mexico wants to be a middle power in Latin America and an international middle power in the international arena. So this is the reality. It's some kind of ambiguous, but yes, the leftist ideologies are more close to to Russia and China and Cuba.
Thank you, Gerardo. Maria Fernanda Cruz Islas is asking, from your perspective, what can be done from the legal arena regarding cybercrime?
Let me put you another PowerPoint. Mexico, right now, Mexico is one of the top 5 countries for cybercriminality. I'm a close friend of the former director against cybercriminality at the National Ministry of Justice in Mexico. And he had 4 years ago 100 agents against cybercriminality. And he asked for 300 new agents. So this is the future. Mexico, we don't have a cybercrime law. There are a lot of initiatives, of proposals, but they haven't passed. So this is the future for Mexico. If you want to make your dissertation, your investigation on cybercrime in Mexico, the US, and the world, this is a great topic. This is a great topic. I was advisor, international consultant from LexisNexis. This is one of the most important international companies on this in this problem. And in the last years, Mexico and Brazil became the 3 and the 5 power on cybercriminality in the world. So the answer to your question is, we don't have a cybercrime law, unfortunately.
Okay. Horacio Estavillo, in your opinion, Maestro Rodriguez, what is the greatest challenge of President López Obrador's 6-year term?
This is a tricky question. I don't know how to answer this question in terms of thinking about the mind of President López Obrador or thinking about Mexican problems. Thinking about the mind of President López Obrador and its agenda, he has to continue to reduce violence, finish his second most important infrastructure initiative, that is the Maya train, the Yucatan Peninsula. I think to maintain the public opinion that he's fighting the corruption, but unfortunately, he's not fighting the structural corruption. So, and I think that, let me return to the question, your opinion, Mr. Rodriguez, what is the greatest challenge of President López Obrador 6 years? To keep in the next presidency some of his team, maybe Claudia Sheinbaum, the Mexico City mayor, the Minister of Foreign Relations, Marcelo Ebrard, or another guy. I think its challenge is to maintain its favorable, positive public opinion. We have a lot of challenge. This is in the mind of López Obrador, but in the challenge of Mexico is maintaining the inflation below 6% or 5%, reduce insecurity, reduce corruption, reduce impunity, make efforts against climate change. But this is the agenda of the opposition and the civil society. Unfortunately, it's not the agenda of President López Obrador.
Okay, now, an anonymous attendee, given the federal government's position to end the Iniciativa Mérida, what new alternatives are there for bilateral cooperation between Mexico and the United States to focus resources on research and training of border personnel to suppress firearms trafficking into Mexico?
Great question. Thank you. Iniciativa Mérida is closing. There is money that has been assigned by the U.S. Congress, and it is using it. But the next steps is Mexico is not going to, the Mexican government is not going to accept more money from the U.S. Congress, like this concept of Merida initiative. But the U.S. government, with USAID, U.S. Department of State programs, agency, international financing programs, I hope to continue the cooperation with the border agents. Let me read again the opinion. Research and training of border personnel to suppress firearms trafficking to Mexico. We at the university, we have really close relations with the ATF, attaché office here in Mexico City. Since many years ago, we have an alumni from lab working there. And the problem is that the ATF has really small power, has little money here in Mexico. The office of ATF here in Mexico is really small, but the ATF is making a lot of efforts to train Mexican state, local agents for using the E-Trace program. You know, the E-Trace program, for the rest of our friends here in the webinar, the E-Trace system is just Department of Justice program, ATF program, that when an arm here in Mexico or in the US or other parts of the world, we can know exactly when the arm or the part of the arm, the gun was bought in the US. So I think that Mexico, and I have told it to the US Embassy officials and the Mexican governments, we have to ask to the Biden administration to send more money to the ATF and more money to the ATF office here in Mexico City, so that we can improve the cooperation, the coordination, not only with the national attorney, but with the local authorities.
Thank you. We have one more question, and it says, and it's related to the one that you were just answering. In terms of armed trafficking in Mexico and the US efforts to control it, what is your opinion of Operation Fast and Furious and its consequences?
It was a good idea, but it was terrible operated. In ethical terms, it was terrible. So it was a good idea in terms of intelligence, but the problem is that there was corruption inside the US agencies. Not corruption, but it is corruption because of this kind of operation. If you lost the arms, the externalities of this public policy, they were terrible. You know, These arms not only killed Mexicans, these arms also killed US citizens in some violent actions. So I'm really critical from this operation. And you have to imagine this thing. The former ambassador to the US at Washington, Eduardo Medina Mora, approved this operation. The Mexican government approved this operation. So it is really difficult for Mexico and for the last government of Felipe Calderón to respond, to protect to this program. No, I think maybe there was other alternatives to detect this illicit trafficking of arms. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Gerardo. I think those are all the questions that we have in both the question and answer chat and in the general chat. So Gerardo, I don't know if you want to close your remarks with anything.
Yes, for sure. Come to Mexico. We need more US citizens, US American professors, professionals that know Mexico. And for sure, we need more Mexicans to know more in the United States. We will be glad really to receive you here at the University of the Americas Puebla, or any university you want to come. Please come. If we want to resolve the US-Mexican problems, we need to know better these two neighbors. And the last thing, we're going to be neighbors, although there is a meteorito that divides us again. So forever and ever, we will be neighbors. We have to know each other. Thank you, Hazel. Thank you to the Comexus, and thank you to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City.
Thank you, Gerardo, very much for this afternoon and for your remarks. Let me remind everyone that we will have our last presentation next Monday at 4 p.m. And if I can just make another advertisement and announcement, I invite everyone to listen to a new podcast that has been put together by one of our board members, former ambassador to Mexico from the US, Roberta Jacobson, and a couple of our alumni. You can find it in Spotify. Let me give you the correct name of that podcast, which is Dream. Yes, Marin, thank you. She has shared it in the chat, and I hope you enjoy that podcast. It's very interesting. It touches some of the things that have been discussed by our presenters here. And the podcast is called The Mexican Dream. So thank you very much again, and have a great afternoon. Happy 5 de Mayo.
Gracias, saludos.
Saludos.